Well, apparently, Rand Paul has explicitly endorsed Mitt Romney for president. I'm at work, so I can't really watch any videos right now. So I'll be eager to get home and see what everyone's saying. But I think that a lot of people are going a little bit too far here. They're putting, and that's not okay. Well, let me just say what I think here. A lot of people think that he's betraying the movement or whatever, but nobody who's a libertarian, nobody who believes in better foreign policy and ending the Fed and civil liberties, nobody who believes any of that stuff and who has supported Ron Paul and or Rand Paul or both is now going to think, well, I now support Romney and I'm for an interventionist foreign policy and I want war with Iran and I want QE4 and I want universal health care and all the other stupid, horrible things that Romney supports. Nobody, quote, in the movement is going to come to that position now because of this. If anything, though, they're going to become more revolted with politics, which isn't really a bad thing. On the other hand, there's a potential here, and I don't know how good of it, good potential it is, but there's a potential that some more moderate Republicans will be more amenable, or at the very least less averse to the libertarian ideology. Why do I say that? Because everybody knows that, by and large, the quote Ron Paul people are a species apart. They're in the Republican Party, or they're active in the Republican Party and the conservative movement, but they're not part of it. It's like they're allies and they don't get along. And there's actually quite a bit of acrimony between the two. This is something that could serve, at least for some people, I don't think for everyone by any means, as a legitimizing gesture. Whereas before they could say, we don't really care about you Ron Paul people because no matter what we do, you're not satisfied with us, so why should we care about what you want? Now, there's the potential, again, for some, I don't think for everybody by any means, to say, okay, if you're going to support our guy, maybe we'll give your concerns more consideration than we otherwise would. Now, that doesn't mean they're all going to become libertarians, and that doesn't even mean that many of them will even soften up. But I think it's fair to say that some of them will. It puts Rand in a much more powerful position. Now, that is not a very happy argument from my point of view, the idea that he would sacrifice his rhetoric in order to gain position. However, Rand sort of has a history of doing this. It's morally ambiguous, and it's not something that I'm comfortable with, but one could certainly make the argument that that you, quote, lie to do good. When Rand was running, he was considerably more bellicose and less libertarian when he was seeking the primary and then again in the general election than he was after he got elected. In fact, he did something I think far worse before his election than endorse Romney, and that was go meet with Bill Kristol, who is, quite frankly, one of the probably the single worst political pundit / intellectual, if you want to call him that, in the entire United States, left or right, Democrat or Republican. I don't know of anybody who is worse than Bill Kristol. And yet, Rand Paul went and had a fairly lengthy meeting with him where he was, quote, in absorption mode. However, once he got elected, Rand Paul has certainly not been any kind of neocon or a hawk. He will talk tough, but then when he gets specific on policy, it's basically, we can't afford this, we should disengage. Now, that's not as morally acceptable as war is wrong, we shouldn't kill people, it's unconstitutional. But it's the same effect to say, well, we should just end this because we can't afford it. That's not as rhetorically appealing, but it gets us to the same place. And it also adds to the argument because now people can't just say, well, you Ron Paul people are just a bunch of pacifist hippies and you don't know the realities of the world are blah, 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 we have to have a world empire. Well, we really can't afford it, that has more obvious pragmatism than the Ron Paul foreign policy does. Now, I would say the Ron Paul foreign policy is infinitely more pragmatic than the neoconservative one. But it doesn't always seem that way. It's not that intuitive. Well, it is at a certain level, but it doesn't always seem that way to people. But the we don't have enough money, we can't afford it, that does. And that's certainly the case with all the talk of everybody who cares to vote is probably aware of the national debt, which is to say it's something that almost everybody knows because most of the electorate is ignorant of most things. That's something that's pretty well known. So I think that it's certainly plausible. I can't say for sure that this is actually the case, but that Rand has done this not to endorse Romney's policies or to embrace them, but simply to put himself in a more persuasive, better, more powerful position. I certainly have misgivings about that, and since he is a politician, I don't think that we can assume and give him the benefit of the doubt. It could just be he's made a huge miscalculation, or he's become power hungry, or he actually thinks that Romney is, really a good guy for the job or whatever. I actually rather doubt that. I think that this is probably a very pragmatic step on his part. My instinct here is that he is viewing this as a place to give himself a better, and I used this for Ron Paul before. I said he's running for president not because he wants to be president, but because he wants a better firing position for his ideology, which surely his presidential runs have given him, even though he has not clinched the nomination, let alone the presidency. The notoriety of what he's been doing has given him a bigger audience, and that's been to the good. I think that it's very likely that Rand Paul is thinking something similar. Now, he could be wrong. It could be that what he gets from this is not worth what he's giving up, because we don't know what he's getting for this. He could. I rather doubt he's going to get the VP nod or anything like that. He might. I mean, he can't increase his clout in the Senate really any more than he already has. He couldn't. I mean, assuming Romney won, which I don't think is all that probable. I guess it could happen, but he would have to leave the Senate to take an appointment, and I think that would be a huge reduction in his relevance. And the other problem is, I mean, the only thing that would really make this worth it would be a VP nod. That would make it worthwhile. I think, and that would really be getting something. A plank in the platform, that really doesn't mean anything. It might be nice to give a good speech. That would be worth something. I don't know if that would be. I mean, again, the pragmatist in me says I don't know if the trade-off is the thing. But I think that the betrayal is a little overblown because the silver platter ideologue Ron Paul is still there, and his ideology is not blemished by that of his son doing this. I mean, if not everybody knows this, but there's actually a Republican in Congress who, when he was younger, was explicitly an anarcho-capitalist, and that's Dana Rohrabacher. And Dana Rohrabacher he's not your average neocon, but he's something of a hawk, and there's not much good to be said of him. But I don't know anyone who says that he ruined the movement because at one time he was an anarchist, even a libertarian anarchist, and now he's not, and so the movement's been destroyed. I don't think that has happened. And true, Dana Rohrabacher is not Rand Paul. He's not he's not a scion of the Paul dynasty, and he didn't have anywhere near the notoriety that Rand does whenever he made his ideological philosophical switch, which presumably was a long time ago. But Ron Paul's movement has a lot more legs now than just Ron Paul or Rand Paul or any other number of politicians. It has actually quite a bit of political clout now. The Campaign for Liberty / Ron Paul element of the Republican Party has basically staged a takeover, which has failed in some places and is incomplete in others, but is an enormous augmentation of its influence within the party relative. I mean, before there was basically none of this influence. There was the occasional isolated Republican here and there who might fit the mold. Now it's actually a force to be reckoned with in many places. And I have my misgivings about that as well. But what Rand is doing, I don't think is going to hurt that at all. Because now those people, this acrimony that happens in the Republican conventions, and is less justifiable when we say, well, look, you Ron Paul people, well, look, Rand stepped up and he endorsed Romney, so maybe we won't cut you out all the time. Now maybe they will, and I have my misgivings about there being not acrimony, because obviously the Republican Party in general and most of its people in it have absolutely atrocious and terrible ideas about just about everything, whether it be foreign or domestic policy. And when they're rhetorically right, it's so shallow and befuddled that it's almost worthless. It almost does a disservice. In fact, it does a lot of the time. I mean, Bush did a huge disservice to free market capitalism because he claimed that's what he believed in. I don't know, he could have fooled me, but so I'm not positive that we want to be all cozy with these people. But when you're talking about persuading people, it does actually help. If you try and persuade someone who you are in good terms with, who you have some level of respect for, and they have some level of respect for you, you're much more likely to convince them of anything, whether it be libertarianism or something else, than if you simply have an acrimonious antagonistic relationship. It's just a fact. If all you can do is yell and scream at each other, you're never going to convince anybody. I mean, you might, that one person who is really susceptible to actual logic and reason might concede, or if you're unbelievably silver-tongued and able to do that, which again, I don't know if anybody living is. I mean, that's something that historically can happen, but it's pretty rare. So there's something to be said for being less acrimonious, and I think this gesture is meant to be that way. And I don't know what results it's going to yield. I don't know what he's going to get out of it. Presumably something. I can't imagine he would do it if he wasn't promised something. That doesn't mean the promise is really worth it or that it will be delivered, but I think that this is likely to make some Republicans more amenable to the liberty message. Not all of them, and I don't even know what it's worth to even say that. Let's assume that some of them are more amenable. Well, how many and how amenable and how far are they going to go? I don't know. So it's hard to say what exactly you would be buying by doing this. But I do know that when I tried to persuade people, people who already knew who I was and we already had a positive relationship, independent of politics or independent of arguing, are much more likely to listen to me. I mean, I have friends, old friends from high school, who are very liberal, who are like Obamanites. But they'll listen to me, and they'll concede points. I mean, they'll say, yeah, you're right, you got a point, you got a point. Because they know and they respect me, and we don't have a simply let's shout at each other relationship. If we did, or if you do, if you have like these comment wars you'll always see on Facebook or on YouTube comments or wherever on message boards, nobody's going to get convinced. Basically, people who pass by and witness those are going to be rooting for one or the other side, and they're not going to be swayed by one or the other side, the opposite side. This rationally could mean, I'm not saying this is actually going to happen, but it's plausible for Rand to expect or to think that this might make that happen. So I don't think it's as bad a deal as a lot of people do. However, he is a politician. We really shouldn't be giving him the benefit of the doubt. We shouldn't give Ron Paul the benefit of the doubt, let alone his son, who has, long before this, not been as principled in his rhetoric as his father has been. He's been not bad as terms of how he votes and what he said since he's been elected. But so people are going to say this is wishful thinking. He's really done it. It is wishful thinking, but it's not wishful concluding. I'm not concluding that I know for sure that this is what's happening. I'm not concluding for sure that Rand Paul isn't a huge douchebag who's had power gone to his head. Because you know what, we all know that can happen, right? So I'm just saying it's plausible that that's what's going on, or that's the idea. And if that's the case, maybe we can disagree with it, but it's hardly a betrayal. You know, if we wanted to compare this, say, to military terms, and say a military commander took an extreme risk because they thought if they did it, they could achieve victory. We might say that the risk isn't worth it, or it's dangerous, or it's reckless, but you couldn't really say that it's treason or that it's betrayal and they're purposely doing it to sabotage whatever cause you're fighting for. I think that's rather unlikely in the case of Red. Is it a misstep? Very well could be. But only time is going to prove that one way or the other. However, the libertarian movement, it existed before the Pauls. It had legs before the Pauls, especially Ron. It's become much, much enhanced, although how much is hard to say. And I don't see that can be undone by the actions of either of them, or both of them. I mean, if Ron Paul came out tomorrow and said, actually, I was wrong, Keynes is right, I believe in the Fed, and I think we should invade Iran, does anyone think that even a single one of his supporters would, I mean, literally even a single one, would change their opinion to agree with any of that? I seriously doubt it. In fact, if he ever did something like that, it would be very dangerous for him. And I'm not going to say more than that, but that's just my opinion. So, apparently, I mean, Ron Paul's candidacy is officially or nearly officially ending at this point. It will be interesting to see what happens at the convention. And this announcement by Rand may actually make what happens at the convention even more interesting. And it is possible, however, that this is something that will placate the Ron Paul delegates and make the RNC convention less interesting than I would like it to see. In which case, Rand will have made a very large error. But we will see. Ultimately, these political shenanigans are rather superficial either way they go. The ideological shift, to the extent that it's occurring, is the most important thing. And I don't see how this is really negative, and I do think that it has actually the potential to be a boost. Perhaps a modest one, but still. So, that's it.